Hello and welcome to CSGO Talk, where the videos aren't short, the rants aren't sweet, and we almost never get to the point. I am your host, Chaos, and guys, I don't have Tongue with me today. It's unfortunate, our schedules were kind of conflicting, and we just could not find the time to get together and do the recording at the same time, because we both have work, school, all that stuff. So, anyways, we decided that I would just do the video by myself this week, but he will be back next week, do not worry. So anyways, we have a lot to talk about today, but first, before we get into that, I wanted to mention that this will be available on SoundCloud for download. A lot of you guys last week asked for like a podcast version of this or a smaller file, so you wouldn't have to stream the whole, like use all your data on the, like if you're in your car or something for the video. So now it will be on SoundCloud. The upload might be like slightly later after the YouTube, just because I have to upload the YouTube one first, but the SoundCloud will go up shortly after. So anyways, link will be in the description for that. Enjoy. Anyways, let's get right into it. We have a lot to talk about today. We need to start off this show, first off, with, obviously, the big kahuna. We've got S1mple joining NaVi. So, this is a pretty big one. So, S1mple will be replacing Zeus. So, last week on the show, we were kind of predicting where would S1mple go. And as most predicted, both I and Tongue and I said that he would probably be going to NaVi. I mean, Hellraisers, Gambit, they didn't seem likely to me. Why would he join a team like that? But that's besides the point, and it was more of we were wondering who does he replace, maybe Flamey, maybe Zeus. I said Zeus, Tongue said Flamey. I was right, of course. I mean, why wouldn't I be right? But I actually have to question, so I wanted to first start off, before we get into the whole potential of the team, and that's what people are really excited about. What's the cost of it, right? What's the cost of S1mple joining? So one, obviously there's probably going to be chemistry issues. One, just because there's always chemistry issues when someone joins a team. But especially S1mple, right? I mean, obviously, we know he's been toxic in the past. That's not something we need to talk about because, obviously, it's been talked about to death. I think it's kind of like beating a dead horse, not beating a horse to death. That's not the saying. So, was Zeus the right person to oust for this? That's my question, because you have to think about Zeus. He's famous for being very charismatic. I think he's the most fun player on that team, and he's the most outgoing guy on that team, and he was kind of the fan leader, I guess you could say. I think he was the most prominent face on that team. I mean, you could say Guardian was but that's just because Guardian's the best player. But in terms of being outgoing and funny and exuberant, right, a fun guy to just watch and be around, I would say Zeus was that guy for their team. And now we're taking that away and bringing in S1mple, and S1mple has a bit of a character of his own, but not to the level of a Zeus. And I think that it will have some drawback. Now, in terms of S1mple being toxic, I don't know. I'm sure they can figure that out. They are professional players. They should be able to. I didn't see why it was such a huge problem on Liquid in the first place. I understand it's always tough playing with someone toxic, but I mean, if you're a professional CS player, you're getting paid, 6+ figures to play this game, sometimes even 7 figures to play this game. You should be able to figure that out, right? It shouldn't be a problem. But anyways. That was my kind of question. Do you think that S1mple is the right piece, or do you think that Zeus was the right guy to take out? We'll have to see how things go. Obviously, they have about a month now before Star Ladder, which is it's not in Beijing, I think it's Nanjing, China. So they have about a month to get ready for that. Then we have to talk about S1mple himself and his potential within the team. So S1mple is the best Ukrainian player, right? Of all the Russian, Ukrainian, basically like the what's called the CIS area, right? He's the best CIS player. I think he's probably the best player, not in the world, just because he hasn't proven that just yet. I don't think. I think he could definitely go up against Coldzera, Nico, Shocks, Olaf. I think he's up there with the rest of them, right? With the best players. I just don't think he's the best yet, but he definitely could be. And I've said many times that I think one day S1mple probably will be the best player in the world. But I want to talk about his potential within the team. Now, his potential with the team, he's gonna be the best player on the team. Guardian is obviously still gonna be a great player and a great, I guess, I don't know how to say, icon for the team. But it's going to be very interesting. I think one aspect of the team that people haven't really been talking about is the dual opping of both Guardian and S1mple. That seems like a totally potent threat. I mean, imagine the double op on CT side where you put Guardian on one side of the map, S1mple on the other. I mean, they will lock down that CT side, and they're both very good at aggressive opping as well. So I think that it helps in two fronts. One, when you want a double op, which opens up many more strategies for Sterix. And then on another front, where you could say if maybe Guardian's having a bad day, that s1mple can then go in and replace him and basically pick up the opping, because Guardian's still a good rifler even if he's not having a great opping day, and maybe s1mple can pick up the opping. So I think that's a very interesting combination there, and I'm very, very excited to see what happens there. In terms of how he fits in as a rifler, now, s1mple is a guy who can play any role. He can play a lurk, even though that's not his strength. I think his strength is playing, entry frag type, where he's one in the first or second guy in, and he has the incredible aim to just wipe out a site and clear everybody out. So that's going to be very interesting. I really am excited to see how this team goes, and I kind of wanted to talk about the expectations for this team a little bit too also, and that being, what do we think they will do? So they've already been, NaVi is already I would say top 5 team in the world right now. They haven't been performing at their peak lately, but if you look at earlier in the year, they were supposed to be the best team in the world this year, right? They were the favorites to win MLG Columbus. They ended up losing in the finals to SK. They won multiple lands going up to MLG Columbus. So I think that they're definitely a team who is a top 5 in the world, was supposed to be possibly a 1 or 2 in the world, and just haven't quite hit that upper echelon yet. But I think that they definitely have the potential to, especially now with s1mple. You add in Zeus, really, he was a great tactical mind, but I think he's similar to s1mple, where Zeus obviously stopped being the IGL, and they made Sterix the coach the IGL. So basically, Zeus was kind of a little bit of dead weight. Not to say that he's not a good player, it's just that he wasn't the strongest player. He's definitely the weakest player in terms of fragging on the team. And so they said, well, we have to get a team of 5 fraggers. A team of 4 fraggers isn't going to cut it if we don't have you calling, right? So I think it's kind of the s1mple situation in Cloud9, where s1mple is just very good tactically, but he doesn't quite have that fragging ability. And I think that was the case here in NaVi, where they said, well, we're going to bring in s1mple because, Zeus, you were valuable with your tactics, but you're not even calling tactics anymore. You're not even calling strats. So we're going to have to bring in a super fragger. And so it's going to be really interesting. The dual combo of Flamey and s1mple and Seized going into sites with their rifling abilities is going to be amazing. Obviously, I think Edward will still remain the lurk on the team. I don't think s1mple will be a lurk. That's not his role. He could do it, I'm sure. That's just not what he's best at. That's not what he's known for. Now, in terms of where I think they will be, I think I'm going to give them 3 months, and you have to look at who are the best teams right now. I think, to me, the top, in terms of top teams, I think they should be up there with SK. I think SK and NaVi are very, very similar tactically. Virtus Pro and Fnatic are also up there, and I wanted to talk about this later in the show, but I guess I could talk about it now in terms of who my top 3 or 4 are. I wanted to say that SK is still number 1, obviously, but I actually think that Virtus Pro is the second best team in the world now, because I think they've returned to that extremely peak level of their play, that high level of play that they've been kind of lacking in the past. They finally won E-League, which is, basically the next thing close to a major. And I think that they're actually slightly better than Fnatic, because Fnatic, went out in quarters in Columbus, did they go in quarters or semis in Columbus? I think they went out in quarters. They went out in semis in Columbus. Yes, they went out in quarters in Columbus. Sorry, yeah. They went out in semis in Columbus. They haven't even made it to a final of a major after having their huge run. And then you have Virtus Pro, who made it to the semis of this previous major and now have won. And they lost to SK, who's the best team in the world. And then here at E-League, they won and they beat Fnatic in the final. So I think that they have a lot of potential here, and I think that Virtus Pro is the second best team in the world at this very moment. But you look at NaVi and you say, I think Fnatic's third, and then right now it's between, I think it's G2 fourth and then NaVi fifth. So I think that instantly with this pickup, not instantly, but within a month or so, I think NaVi will already be better than G2, and who knows with the whole French shuffle, who knows if it's actually going to happen or not. That's not what this video is about. But if this current G2 roster, I think they'll be almost immediately better than them within a month. And so then you have NaVi in the top 4. The question is, do they get better than VP and Fnatic? That's a tough one to tell. I think in terms of raw talent, Fnatic is still probably the best team in the world in terms of raw talent, but I think they're probably third best just because they haven't been hitting their stride lately. So I think if Fnatic doesn't get out of the funk that they're in now, that NaVi will be better than Fnatic. And then you look at Virtus Pro, and I think Virtus Pro is very good, but Virtus Pro is incredibly good tactically, and they play so smart if you look at their gameplay. I might actually do a demo analysis in the future, but they play so smart, so well together. And obviously that's what happens when you have a team together for 3 years. But I think that NaVi tactically will be better than Virtus Pro within a few months. It's going to take a little bit, because to be a great team tactically, you need that chemistry, and that's why I said teams like Virtus Pro, like SK, who for the most part have been playing together for at least a year or longer, right? To get that supreme level of tactics, that supreme level of just coordination, it takes like a year. So I think it will take a while for s1mple to get in there and be at that same like that clicking, where you don't really have to be talking to each other and saying, oh, you go here, you go here. It just happens because you know your teammates and know what they're going to do. So that takes time. But in terms of raw strat calling, I think that NaVi is already slightly better in terms of tactics. They just, similar with Fnatic, haven't been getting it done, basically. They haven't been doing it. And I think that tactically, I think they'll be slightly better. It's just they won't have quite that chemistry of Virtus Pro, but talent-wise, I think they will outmatch Virtus Pro. So I think that they do take that 2 spot in the world. And then the question is, do they beat SK? And I think, honestly, right now, when I look at SK play, they're almost the better version of NaVi. Fallen has said many times that he learned a lot from NaVi. He was one of Virtus Pro, NaVi, and maybe a little bit of Fnatic were kind of his favorite teams to watch in terms of like demos when this team was getting a lot better. And he modeled SK a lot after Virtus Pro and NaVi. So he modeled the team after them very much. So you have to think that, well, SK is going to be very strong for a while. I mean, with Fur's injury, we don't know what's going to happen, but when he comes back, I'm sure they'll still be the best team in the world. So I think that NaVi, really, within 3 months, will probably be the second best team in the world, and it'll be a battle between them and SK for who's the best. And I think that it's tough to tell who has more talent, because you have Guardian and Fallen, right, the 2 oppers, which I think right now with the way Guardian's playing, I think they're both at about the same level. Then you have s1mple and, coldzera as the best riflers. I think they're pretty much at the same level. And then you have all the other 3 who are, Edward, Seized, Flamey, and then FNX. I can't think of their names right now. But anyways, the other 3 SK players. I think these 2 teams are very, very even, and I think that within 3 or 4 months, I think it'll be a close battle. I'm hoping, by the next major. What's the next major? Is it DreamHack? I believe it's DreamHack, or maybe even by ESL New York. We will see that these 2 teams will be the 2 best teams going in, and it'll be very interesting. I think they match up really well. So in terms of expectations, I expect NaVi to be a top 3. Probably even top 2 team within, I would give them 3 to 4 months probably. So let's go ahead and move on from NaVi. Obviously, that was the biggest news today, but I wanted to talk about yesterday's news, or I'm recording this on a Thursday night. This will go up on a Friday. Thursday news. So the gun update, and I wanted to talk about kind of what impact that had on CSGO and maybe the meta. So I've personally gone in, and yesterday before my team practice, I had DM, so I did a half-hour DM session just to see how the tap firing and all that felt. And I can't tell if it was just placebo, because I was looking for, I was purposely tapping more than I usually would, right? So if I don't know if it was more placebo, but it seemed more accurate. And if you look at the data, it seems to be about 8% more accurate while tapping, and bursting and spraying, the first 5 bullets are more accurate. So if you're spraying, or if you're only shooting 5 bullets, it's a burst. But if you're bursting, right, it's much more accurate for the first 5 bullets, and then the 6th bullet is kind of an equilibrium point, and then after that, if you continue to spray, it's less accurate than it was before. So for those of you who don't know, they decreased the recovery time for the AK-47 and the M4, which means that, when you shoot, right, you shoot, and then it's kind of like you have the recoil. Well, it's 8% faster from the point it goes recoil and then back down when you're tapping. but like for the first 5 bullets, it's faster. For the 6th bullet, it's the same, and then for the 7th through the 30th clip, it's slightly slower every time. And there's graphs and all this, and I'm sure if you go on the Reddit or just look at CS:GO's sites, you'll see plenty of graphs and data on it. But basically, they made it about 8% faster recovery time for the first 5 bullets. Now, I think that people were saying that it kind of introduces a new meta of crouch tapping. I'm not sure though, because I think that the WAD spam or the not the WAD, the AD spam is still more viable, because the AD spam is useful not just because it's accurate, but the reason you do it is because you're a harder target to hit. If you're just crouching on the ground, like just a static target, yeah, you're going to be more accurate, but you're going to be super easy to kill, right? It's just, 2 bullets and you're dead, right? It's going to be very easy to hit you. So I think that crouch tapping isn't going to be a huge thing, in my opinion. I've tried kind of going around and crouch tapping in a DM, and it seemed okay, but it wasn't like... It didn't seem like it was better than using AD. Now, there are rumors that they will reduce acceleration slightly so that the AD is kind of nullified. Then it'd be interesting. Maybe crouch tapping becomes more viable. We'll have to see, but obviously that hasn't been implemented yet. That's just speculation. So I think that this has an important... I can't say it's meta changing, like it's not going to change the whole core of the game, but I think it does actually increase the skill gap between lesser skilled and more skilled players. But at the same time, I think it makes it more of a point and shoot shooter rather than a shooting control, right? It emphasizes the ability to be able to point at someone and shoot, because once you actually start shooting, it's more accurate. But I don't know. See, it's tough for me to tell if this is a good or a bad thing. I've seen mixed reviews. A lot of pros liked it, but some pros didn't. And Sean Garris, I saw on Twitter. I was looking at all the responses for all the pros, right? And Scream loved it, obviously, because he's Mr. One Tap. But guys like Sean Garris said that it kind of lowered the skill ceiling, which I agree with, right? Because if you look at what's so hard about aim? It's like there's 3 aspects. There's the movement, there's the getting on target, and then there's the shooting, the actual control of your shooting, right? So most pros are very good at movement, very good at pointing and shooting, and then the shooting part as well is difficult. So every pro is great at it, but if you look at what's the difference between a pro and a Joe, is that a pro is very good at all 3 aspects, while someone like, say me, like I think I'm a decent player, but I'm not like a fucking pro, right? I'm not Olaf Meister, okay? So yeah, maybe my movement's really good, and maybe my like point and shoot. I think most people are pretty good at point and shoot, right? And because that's what most of these training maps, I think my gripe with them is they're very good at getting you to put your crosshair on the target, but in terms of actually helping you shoot your movement, it's not as good. So yeah, I'm very good at maybe putting my crosshair on target and good at moving, but my shooting skills aren't as accurate. My spray control isn't as accurate. Well, now if that's not as necessary for me, well, the skill ceiling has just decreased. The skill gap has maybe just decreased a little bit. So I don't know. We'll have to wait. I think give it a few weeks, give it a month to see how people react to it. It's only been a day of playing with it, so we don't really know how it's going to be. I think that it makes it easier for pros to worry less about shooting, and it makes it easier for players, but also, see me, I'm personally more of a sprayer. I'm not a one-tap guy. I like to burst, and if I don't hit my burst right away, I have good spray control. But my tap control in my pure tapping is not as good. So we'll see. And guys like Coldzera, maybe Shocks, maybe. I mean, Shocks can do one-taps, but he's also he has very good spray control. Maybe they're more affected. Guys like Scream it'll benefit them a lot, right? Because he's just gonna be one-tapping even more. So we'll have to see how the meta changes. I don't know exactly what's gonna happen here. It's gonna be interesting to see. I don't think it's gonna be a huge difference in terms of like meta changing, game changing. I don't think it's gonna be to that extreme, but it should be interesting to see what goes on here. And I think that definitely tapping will be more part of the meta now. I think that you will see more tap kills. Maybe it'll increase 8%, right, in conjunction with the decrease. So maybe we'll see 8% more tap kills, which isn't a huge effect, but it is a little bit. So we'll have to see, and people will probably have to adjust their game, and it'll be interesting, but we don't know just yet. So That's really what I have to say, but it's hard to tell. I don't want to just be pure speculation here on saying, oh, this is exactly what's going to happen, because I really don't know, and I don't think anybody does yet. So now I wanted to talk about E-League and Virtus Pro. So there's two things I wanted to talk about. So obviously I talked about before, I was going to say this for now, but I felt like it kind of worked when I was talking about the expectations for NaVi. But obviously Virtus Pro won E-League. They are kind of back to their top form, right? Back where they were at Katowice 2014, 2 years ago. And it's good to see this veteran team. And we're looking at maybe roster changes. Obviously that's all out the window now. Definitely not roster changes for them. So we'll see what happens. But I wanted to talk about the ESL Pro League spot. So I don't know if you guys heard about this, but it was basically a little bit of controversy because, man, I have hiccups right now. Pronex kind of voiced on Twitter. So for those of you who don't know, ESL Pro League last season, Virtus Pro went something like 4-18, or was it 4-22 maybe? Basically, they did horribly. They lost to everybody. They played a bad season. They just played horribly, and then they were given a last chance qualifier, which normally didn't happen, but they were given one against Penta. And basically this was a ploy by ESL to keep Virtus Pro, because obviously Virtus Pro brings viewership. So they said, okay, we're going to keep Penta, we're going to put them against Penta, who isn't even a top 20 team in the world. Virtus Pro should win. And Penta won 2-1 in the best of 3. So it was like, oh man, well, I guess Virtus Pro, we've given them all the chances we can, they're out. And so they're going to have to sit out Pro League this season. And now they said, oh, we're going to do voting. And so basically they said it was between Godsent, I don't even remember, Penta maybe, Virtus Pro. It was basically nobody teams against Virtus Pro. Obviously, Virtus Pro, with the fan base that they have, is going to win that voting. And so it was pretty much rigged, where they said, we're going to have to vote in the last team. And Pronex kind of voiced his being upset about it, because he said, how many chances is Virtus Pro going to get? They went 4-18, right? They lost a best of 3 to Penta of all teams. I mean, Penta, nothing against it, but they're not, an incredibly strong team. And it's like, you're not deserving of being in the Pro League this season. But at the same time, you have to question, well, Virtus Pro did just go to the semifinals of a major. Virtus Pro did just win E-League. So they are clearly, a top 3-4 team in the world. I think they're the second best team in the world. So are they quite deserving in the fact of, did they perform well last season? No, they're not. But should they still have a spot, being who they are, being a top 4 team? Because it isn't the point of the Pro League to be the absolute best pro teams in the world. I think so. It's tough to tell, because you always have to have, like, what's fair and what should we do, right? It's kind of the balance. Like, what's fair? Well, what's fair is probably keeping them out for a season. But at the same time, you have to think about it from ESL's perspective. First of all, esports is at a pivotal point, right? We're trying to grow esports. It's at an inflection point where it's really just growing very, very fast. So you want as much viewership as you possibly can. So how do you get more viewership? You get the best possible teams and obviously the biggest possible fan bases. And Virtus Pro is one of the biggest fan bases in the world, one of the best teams in the world. So obviously viewership is going to be better for Virtus Pro than, say, for a Godsent or a Penta we're playing, right? I mean, that's just obvious. Now, that doesn't mean that we should start, like, rigging leagues so that only, like, Virtus Pro and Fnatic and all NiP and all these teams get in, right? So I don't think that we should do that. But I think Virtus Pro in this particular case, I'm not super upset about it, because while they did have a bad online season at LAN, they finished top 4 and won, 2 tournaments in back-to-back tournaments. So I can't be too upset about saying, oh, they don't deserve it, because they're obviously, they could whip the ass of half the teams in that league, probably more than them. And they've been weaker online. They're on LANers. I saw someone say that on Reddit that made me laugh, because onliners, but they said, oh, they're on LANers. They can't play online, but for some reason they're just gods on LAN. So that I just wanted to talk about the controversy. Now, do they deserve it? I don't think they deserve the spot. But am I upset about it? Not too much, just because I think that Virtus Pro is such a good team that you can't leave them out, especially with the way they've been performing. It would be a crime to leave them out. But I think that maybe you also should put in whoever deserve that spot. It's all politics. It's all money, really, when it comes down to it. And if you're going to decide between a Penta and a Virtus Pro, it's going to be Virtus Pro. So I also, in the North American leagues, it ended up being Echo Fox, which is getting in with the voting, which isn't surprising because they have Sean Garris and Roca and a lot of famous people on their Freakazoid. So it's not surprising that they won the vote, but in this case, they're very deserving because they won Premier League, which normally the winner of Premier League typically goes on to the Pro League anyways, so it's not like there's much controversy there. Now, to finish off this show, I just wanted to touch on Fur's injury on SK, and then after that, I'll talk about Luminosity signing another Brazilian team signing WinOut. So this is going to be the Brazilian portion of the podcast for all you Brazilians out there. So Fur's injury... SK said that they won't be entering any lands without him, which is fine, I guess. I mean, they said until September, like late September, so they're going to skip Star Ladder, I guess. But honestly, they've had so much prize money already this year, winning 2 majors, that I'm sure they're doing fine on that front. And so missing one land with the cluster of lands that there are these days, I don't think missing one land is that big of a deal for them. Now, I think Fur will be back and fine. This isn't like, it's like an ear injury, so he it's not going to affect like his wrist or whatever. I don't know if he's cleared to play or not, or if they just said that, like, I'm sure it affects his hearing, so maybe he can't play with volume, so maybe he's just going to be like DMing a lot and just playing with no volume or whatever, so we'll have to see what happens there. I think that they're CT sides without him, so they're going to have to play like Pro League and a couple online leagues without him. So I think their CT sides will be weaker without him, just because I think there's probably their strongest CT side aggressor. If you look at who's rushing on CT side, he's very often, like on Mirage, he's rushing into apps and getting picks. So he's a very aggressive CT side player. He's one of the best players on CT side in the world at getting very aggressive and getting early picks and getting that CT advantage, which is so vital, especially when you're playing against Ts, right? Because that man advantage always goes to the Ts. So you have to look at it like, yes, it's going to weaken their CT sides. Now, they are playing in the North American leagues, so other than maybe teams like, Cloud9, maybe TSM, maybe Liquid, right? They're still gonna be like a top 4 team online, and they'll probably still be top 2. I think the only team that will contend with them is Liquid, but once they get Fur back, it should be fine. I'm sure they will still qualify for the ESL Pro League LAN. I don't think that's gonna be a problem for them. So I just wanted to talk about that real quick. I don't think it's going to be too much of an impact because, like they said, it kind of came at the perfect time if you are going to get an injury, because this is like the month and a half or so where you don't really have any lands. You just have some online leagues which don't have as much impact, right? Aren't as important. And then finally, I wanted to talk about Luminosity signing WinOut. So this is really interesting to me because you have to look at Luminosity. They had just completely abandoned the NA scene. They said, yeah, we got the former SK and they did really well and they won us majors. Okay, well, should we go back to drafting NA teams, picking up NA teams? Nah, we're going to go pick up a Brazilian team from ESEA Main, not even Premier. So that kind of made me laugh a little bit. I mean, WinOut's a good team, but I think that if you look at other NA teams, they're probably better right now. But obviously Luminosity sees something where they're going to be kind of nurturing them into being the next, SK or Immortals. And I think it's really disappointing on the North American front where we have SK now a top 10 team, Immortals now a top 10 team, and who are the best teams in NA? Besides Liquid, who we haven't actually seen play with Pimp yet, there's nobody. And you have Cloud9, who's okay, they're getting a little better, but we don't know. Maybe they're going to get rid of Slemmy, who knows? You have TSM, who's getting a little better, but they're nothing impressive. You have maybe Optic. It's just nothing strong. And those are the top 3 NA teams. It's like we're going down rather than up. And then you have now 3 Brazilian teams. You have 2 in the top 10, and this one, who knows, probably within a year from now, they're going to be a top 10 team as well. Looking at how Immortals and SK, looking at their growth curve, I mean, this team probably in a year will be a top 10 team as well. So it's kind of disappointing on the NA front that these Brazilian teams are just grinding the hell out of CS and just beating our asses in terms of NA, and it's just disappointing. I wish that NA teams would kind of step it up. I think that NA has a lot of problems, and I made my Cloud9 video with some problems they had there, which is a lack of discipline. If you want to watch it, I'll put it in the description. But it's just disappointing that you see another, like a North American organization, Luminosity, picking up a second Brazilian team, and it's like these organizations are saying, yeah, do we want North American teams? nah, let's go grab a Brazilian team. They're going to be a little better. They're going to work harder. I think that's the main thing. It's like, oh, these Brazilian teams, they're going to work their asses off. So, I don't know. I just felt like I had to comment on that. It wasn't like huge news or anything. Obviously, WinOut's just like a lower tier team right now, but who knows? Within a year, they could be a top 10 team in the world. Anyways, guys, that's it for today. Like I said, Tongue will be back next week. If you're listening on the SoundCloud via podcast, let me know what you think. Are you happy with SoundCloud? This is the first episode that I'm uploading there, so I really like it. And also, I want to mention sponsors. Hopefully I can get some sponsors for this show, because so far we've been doing it without sponsors, and most podcasts, have sponsors. If you watch like listen to any other podcast or show, they normally have sponsors. So I'm working on that, so hopefully that'll come soon. Keep the show running, and maybe we can upgrade some equipment. I love my Blue Snowball, but I'd love to get a better mic maybe. Which shouldn't cost too much. Maybe just one sponsor will cover that. Anyways, guys, that's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like. And let me know what you guys think about everything. S1mple, going to NaVi, right? The whole Brazilian scene. Do you think Virtus.pro deserved that spot? Do you think Virtus.pro is the second team in the world? What do you guys think? I'm really interested in what you guys have to say. And if you don't follow me on Twitter already, go ahead and do that as well. That's pretty much it for today, guys. I will see you later. Peace.